say that you're sending to Ukraine... Thank you, Prime Minister. You say that you're sending the quality and quantity of weapons that Ukraine deserves and needs, but it was clear from what President Zelensky was saying to you and other world leaders that he would like more. So first of all, are you comfortable with the level of weapons you're sending collectively? And secondly, how uncomfortable does it make you feel that by rolling out a no-fly zone, by ruling out NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine, and by refusing to give any sort of indication of red lines, that really the only end to this is when President Putin decides he's had enough?
Thanks very much, Nick. And you're right to put your finger on the agony that everybody feels in this group, all Western countries, the whole of NATO, the G7, about our inability to do more to help given the constraints we face. And I think it's fair to say that there isn't a Western democracy that's currently contemplating putting boots on the ground in Ukraine. And we've got to be clear about that. Nor is there a country that is willing to enforce a no-fly zone in the way that we would so like to, but unfortunately it does mean air-to-ground attacks on Russian air defences, and it does mean taking down Russian fast jets and asking the RAF to do that. That's not something that any country here is contemplating. What we are doing is steadily ratcheting up the movement of lethal but defensive weaponry to Ukraine, and that is growing in volume the whole time. And what the Americans are doing and what they have done is really quite extraordinary already, and the UK is proud of what we've contributed. I'll go to Sam Coates of Sky.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Sam Coates of Sky News. President Zelensky, interestingly, didn't repeat his call for a no-fly zone when he addressed NATO leaders. Instead, he was very, very specific. He wants tanks and jets. Are NATO members, is the United Kingdom going to give him tanks and jets? And if not, why not?
Thanks, Sam. He did indeed call for tanks, and there's a particular reason for that. What President Zelensky wants is to try to relieve Mariupol and to help the thousands of Ukrainian fighters in the city. To that end, he does need armour as he sees it. We're looking at what we can do to help, but I've got to tell you, logistically at the moment, it looks very difficult, but both with armour and with jets. We're very conscious of what he's asking for. At the moment, we're looking at the equipment that we think is more immediately valuable is missiles that will enable the Ukrainians to protect themselves against bombardment from the air, but also to deal with the Grad rocket launchers, the Russian heavy artillery. That is doing such death and dealing such death and destruction in the cities. And there, I think, if we can really help them, that would be extremely valuable, because they need protection from that absolutely merciless onslaught from artillery and from the rocket launchers. James Mates, ITV.
Prime Minister, you've also spoken about weaning Europe off Russian oil and gas. There'll be a discussion tonight that you won't be part of at the European Council. Is Europe doing enough? Are the Germans doing enough? What will Britain do to help other countries who rely more on Russian oil and gas to wean themselves off it?
Thanks, James. Look, and I just want to say that this is easier for some countries than it is for others, and everybody can see that. And clearly, the dependency in Germany and in Italy is very strong, and there are many other European countries that depend on Russian gas. But what they're all doing is moving to extricate themselves from that position and to avoid being blackmailed by Vladimir Putin. And I think that what Olaf Scholz has done, the steps that they're taking, I think it's heroic. And I applaud what Germany is doing. They've set themselves deadlines to move away from oil and gas. I don't think it'll be easy. And the Italians are doing the same. I don't think it'll be easy for them. But it's the right thing to do in the long term, in the medium term. And we will help. of course, and one of the ways that I think we should all work together is in the sharing and the development of alternative provision, not least wind power. I mean, the Baltic countries, for instance, are heavily dependent on gas, but they have a fantastic future as generators of clean renewable energy. We want to help that. We have a lot of experience of it. Jason Gretz, Daily Mail.
Thanks, Prime Minister. The Kremlin has named you today as their public enemy #1, saying you're leading the kind of anti-Russian resistance internationally. I wondered why you thought that had happened, whether you thought we were going to get any blowback back home from that, and how you feel about it. And you just mentioned wind farms. Is the price of all this going to be sort of going back to having more onshore wind farms back home?
Okay, well, there's a couple of points there, Jason. First of all, I think it's very, very important for everybody to understand that I don't think there's a single person round the table in NATO or the G7 who is against Russians or the Russian people. Absolutely not. Least of all me. I think I'm probably the only Prime Minister in UK history to be called Boris. You know, I have that distinction, and I'm not remotely anti-Russian, but I think what we all agree is that what Vladimir Putin is doing, the way he's leading Russia at the moment, is utterly catastrophic, that his invasion of Ukraine is inhuman and barbaric, and the conduct of that invasion is now moving into the type of behaviour that, as I've said before, we haven't seen in the continent of Europe for 80 years, and it's horrific. So you can be sympathetic towards ordinary Russians who are being so badly led, but you can be deeply hostile to the decisions of Vladimir Putin, the way he's leading his country. And sorry, you had another question about onshore wind. Look, I want to be clear. I think the massive opportunity for the UK is in offshore wind, and we've got good at that. We were, until very recently, I'm slightly to my irritation, we seem to be overtaken now by China, but we were until recently the biggest producer of offshore wind in the world. And one of the things I want to be setting out in the forthcoming British energy security strategy is how we can regain our lead as the #1 and where we're going to be doing it. And I think you can do it in a completely environmentally friendly way. You can generate phenomenal quantities of renewable energy at zero marginal cost, and it is the way forward. Euronews, Meave McMahon. No Euronews. Forgive me. I'm going to go to Natasha Clark from The Sun. Natasha.
Jens Stoltenberg said earlier today that there will be severe consequences if Russia does go ahead and use chemical weapons in Ukraine. What does that mean? Does it mean boots on the ground, or is that something that we're completely ruling out already? And you said earlier that you'd like to see Ukraine handed the hosting of the next World Cup. Would you like to see them automatically qualify for this year's World Cup?
Right, okay, so first of all, on chemical, biological, tactical nuclear weapons, all of these are viewed with utter horror by people around the table today. I just heard from my friend Fumio Kishida, who represents the only country in the G7 actually to have experienced nuclear weapons on his, or has seen his country attacked by nuclear weapons. There is a visceral horror of the use of these weapons of mass destruction. I think that if Putin were to engage in anything like that, the consequences would be very, very severe. You have to have a bit of ambiguity about your response, but I think it would be catastrophic for him if he were to do that. And I think that he understands that. But you know, when you look at what he's saying, I think Joe Biden is right to warn, because you know, when the Russians start doing this stuff about oh, well, there are factories in Ukraine producing American biological weaponry. You know that that is a prelude to a false flag operation, and they could well do something. But I think it would be a profound and a disastrous mistake for Putin were he to do that. On Ukraine qualifying for the European, is it the European? I'm not. Look, football is not my best subject. As you, the World Cup. You mean should they be given a bye and qualify automatically? Sounds like a good idea to me, but I'm out of area here. I've got to admit that's not my strong subject. I don't see why not. Is my view. James, I'm not going to say. I'm not going to comment on that, James. I'm not going to comment on that. Let's go to. Look, let me put it this way: given what Ukraine has been going through, given the privations that Ukrainian footballers have had to endure, I'm sure that every possible sympathy and allowances should be made for them. Let me put it that way. How about that? Let's go to Natalia Drozdiak from Bloomberg.
Yeah, I'm right here. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I just had two quick questions. On the nuclear threat, how concrete is that? Can you give us a sense of those discussions? And secondly, you mentioned this morning that allies are examining ways to stop Putin from using Russia's gold reserves. Could you tell us whether those discussions have moved on today? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. So I think it's very important to stress that I think that the discussion of the use of nuclear weapons is a distraction, and it's intended to be a distraction from what is really going on. And that is a savage attack with conventional means on innocent people in urban centers in Ukraine. Absolutely barbaric use of artillery and mortars and rockets as I've described, thermobaric bombs included, it now seems. That is what is going on. And what we're talking about is the right of the Ukrainian people to be equipped with the weapons to defend themselves. And all discussion of nuclear weapons is intended to frame this as a confrontation between Russia as a nuclear power and other nuclear powers. That's not what's going on. What's going on is a confrontation between Russia and entirely innocent people in Ukraine. That's what it's between. And what we're trying to do is help those people, and I think that is morally the right thing to do. On gold reserves, there is evidence that the Russians may be trying to get round. I mean, the Russians are obviously going to try to get round the sanctions on their gold, and we're taking steps to try to make sure that there's no leakage, no sale of bullion into markets around the world. Now, and that's what we're working on. Last question to Steve Swinford of The Times.
Prime Minister, just to come back to Natasha's question, we heard from from a Western official today that if Russia did use chemical weapons in Ukraine, it would be highly unlikely that there would be a military intervention from NATO. Can I just clarify, are you in that position, or would you rule that out, or do you think it's possible that we could have a military intervention? Is it something you're prepared to consider?
I just want to repeat the answer I gave to Natasha, which is I think that any such action would be not only morally repugnant, indefensible, but disastrous for Putin as well. And I think, well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave it there and rush for the plane under strict instructions. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.